Hello everyone and welcome back to the Wolf Pack. Today we're not going to waste any time at all because we are going to learn how to play Andromeda's Edge right now. First up, you'll put the main board in the center of the table along with the event board and the scrapyard right next to it. This right here is the event marker and it's going to go at the spot that matches your player count on the event board. For your very first game, definitely go with the Galactic Dawn event deck because it is nicer to players, but you can always switch the event decks out later on. Next, you're going to separate out the 15 planet tiles versus the 6 aligned spaces. We'll set up for a 2-player game today, so go ahead and draw 4 planets and shuffle these together with the 6 aligned spaces. So these are going to be your starting tiles. You'll put one at a time face up, starting from the top left and going from left to right, top to bottom. Now above all the planets, there's this region called the nebulae. Shuffle the 6 orphaned nebula moons and place one at each nebula space. Then shuffle each of the 5 colors of the planetary moon tokens, and on each planet, you're going to stack 3 moons face down and then flip them face up. Then you move on to setting up the epic raiders. Pick an S-class raider, and the game does recommend that you start out with the Vorticon strikers for your very first game. Roll 2 of the raider dice and place 1 S-class raider on the matching dice that was rolled, and it's totally fine if they do end up in the same nebula. From there, you'll pick 1 A-class, 1 B-class, 1 C-class, and 1 D-class raider and build out their standees or miniatures as well. Then you'll pick out the game length, and I would definitely recommend going with a shorter 50-point game, even if you're already familiar with dwellings, because there is a lot of taken with Andromeda. So definitely go with a shorter game at first, and then of course run it back to a higher point game afterwards. Next, shuffle each of these 4 module decks and place them on the top of the main board. Reveal 3 modules from each deck, and then go ahead and fill all the spaces below. For the progress tracks, shuffle all of the green discovery tokens, stack 5 tokens face down on each of the 2 marked spaces on the science track, and then you're going to stack another set of 5 discovery tokens face down on the observatory discovery space. This goes at the very top of the science track. And last part of the game setup, shuffle these supremacy tokens and place 1 face up on each of the marked spaces on the supremacy track. Okay, first up, you're going to grab a double-sided station map. The difference is which side you want to build your modules out on. This side right here is where the modules are going to extend outward, so definitely make sure you have enough space to work with here. Then take 3 transporters from your station and put them into your launch bay. Shuffle all the faction cards and deal each player 3 for them to only keep 1. Now on the faction card, the back is going to tell you what resources that you start with, so go ahead and grab these, and then if you flip to the front, it's going to list the progress tracks that you get to advance 1 space on immediately to begin the game. So go ahead and advance 1 space up those progress tracks for what's listed on your faction card. Your faction is also going to have a unique ship upgrade tile. Then you shuffle the 4 neutral ship upgrade types and deal 1 to each player. So in total, you should have 5 ship upgrade tiles. Then you put 1 of your leaders onto each aligned space on the map, roll a die, and then that's going to tell you where you placed your last 2 leaders in the nebula. You should have 1 leader to start with in your supply. Last but not least, time to see who goes first. Roll all 6 of your dice, and the player with the single highest die is going to go first. If there's a tie, compare the next highest die and then the next highest die and so on, exactly like how you do it in the upcoming combat. First player puts their victory point marker on the 1 space of the victory point track, and then going clockwise from there, each other player is going to place their marker on the next empty space. Now in Andromeda's Edge, you are leading a desperate faction. And side note, by the way, if any of you happen to be playing as the Wolf Guardian Howlers, you need to tag me on social media because I want to see it. I want to see how y'all do with it and what you all think about the best faction in the game. But anyways, here in this game, you are leading a desperate faction and you only have a space station, some resources, and a couple of ships. Your goal is to send out your ships to gather resources, claim moons, upgrade your station modules, build developments, battle opponents, and advance in science, industry, commerce, civilization, and of course, supremacy. Most points wins, and endgame is triggered once someone passes the terminus on the victory point track. Okay, so if it's your first time learning a game to this complexity, don't get overwhelmed, don't worry, I got you. When it comes down to it, just zoom out and know that you have 2 main actions. Either you're gonna take your ship from your player station and then put it on a spot on the map and do its action or take a moon. Or once you run out of ships to place onto the board, you're gonna take them all back and then take actions on your player station. That's it. But let's talk first about launching your ship. For your very first launch, you're going to take one of your transports, at least in the beginning of the game, until you unlock stronger ships later on. And then you're gonna take that transport and then put it on any unoccupied region, meaning a region that has no raiders and no players. Then you activate whatever space that your ship is on. If it was a planet, you take that moon and put it at your station. If the planet runs out of moons, then you'll gain the resource listed on that planet. Now, if you decided to launch your ship to an aligned space, which are one of the 6 purple regions, you just take the action listed on the very bottom, and this is how you recruit more leaders. You want leaders so you can build developments later on. So let's say you launched a transport and got a moon on your very first turn. On the following turns, you always have to launch your next ship within range of your first ship. And that range is listed on the top left. So transports can only go to an adjacent region 1 space away, and you cannot place your ship on any space that already has your ship. But for subsequent launches, you can put your ship on occupied spaces. And this right here is how battle starts. Now in this video, I'm also going to point out some easy to miss rules. You can only launch to an aligned space if you can activate that base. And you can only launch ships in the nebula if they have an ability called Voyage, which is usually with your science vessels. So overall, you can launch your ship to a planet, you can launch to an aligned space, or you can launch to the nebula if your ship has the Voyage ability. Now, if you launch to the nebula, you will get the moon token just like any other planet, but see the symbol here? That means that you can look at the top 2 event cards, place one back on top, and then the other one's gonna go on the bottom of the event deck. So you send your transport out to collect moons from different planets. With those moons, you can keep them in your tray, or you can abandon them for that specific resource. You can also slot in a moon token at any time into any slot that has this symbol, like for instance with your tactical operations. This is going to be an area that you look at if you lose battle. Okay, so you've gained resources by launching your transports to planets and collecting those specific moons, right? Let's say it was this planet. We got a moon from that planet, and I'm just going to keep that moon in my tray for now. And then on my second turn, I'm looking at the range of my next ship, and it says 1. So I can launch my ship 1 space away from my first ship into an adjacent region. But this time, it can go into an occupied space. Now the next question is, well, what am I doing with those resources that I've been collecting? Well, one giant way to score points in this game is by buying modules. So where do we get those modules, Tim? Well, if you go to the Maximus field, you can buy 1 or 2 science or industry modules. And this is another easy rule to miss. Every time you see this exclamation mark symbol, it means that you're going to advance up the event marker 1 space forward. Now to buy a module, you pay the cost right above it, take the module to put in your station, and if it has damage on it, you're going to put a damage marker right on that card. Since I took a science module, I also advanced 1 space up on the science track. And you're going to do the same if you buy any module. Now, since I could buy 1 more module, if I don't want it or if I can't buy it, then I can discard a module from either column. Just make sure you buy at least 1 module first. Now, after 2 modules have been removed, you then slide the modules down and then draw new modules to fill in the empty spaces. Now, you know it's super easy. You already now know how Odessa Field works because it's the exact same as the Maximus Field, except now it's with the Commerce and with the Civilization modules. The third aligned space is the Monolith of Ancients. You can spend 2 resources to draw 3 new tactics cards. In the trade hub, you can spend any 2 resources to gain 2 credits, and credits are wild resources in this game, but here's another commonly missed rule. You cannot use credits to replace energy, and as a reminder, all the resources that you can exchange for credits are in the same pool here, and energy has this separate line. So credits will work for titanium, ice, and nanocarbon. Tactics cards also do count as resources every time you see this question mark symbol. At the shipyard, you can pay the resource cost listed on your station to build 1 new ship and place it in your launch bay, or you can perform 1 repair. And lastly, at the development office, you can pay the resource listed and the leader costs in order to develop on an undeveloped planet where you have a transport. So after you've launched a ship and activated that region, you check to see whether there is a raider strike. If there's already a raider in the active region, there's no raider strike and no other raiders can enter your region with 1 exception. Oh, you thought things were gonna be simple here. No, there's a set of raiders called S-class raiders. Now these raiders are going to recruit other S-class raiders within range in order to swarm your region. So just make sure you check the range listed on their card. Now, if there are no raiders in your region, you still check to see if there are any within range of the active region. And if multiple raiders are, then the active player, the one who's taking their turn, they can pick which one will perform a raider strike. All raiders do have the Voyage ability, so they can pretty much attack you anywhere on the map, including in the nebulae. Now, if there is a raider strike, or if 2 or more opposing players or raiders have ships in the active region, then battle will commence. So for me, I find it super easy if you just have the player aid handy. So step 1 in battle is going to be Escalation. Escalation starts with the active player, and then they can move any number of ships within range to join the battle. You only have one chance to make this decision. After the active player, it's going to go clockwise until everyone has ships within range decides to join or not join that fight. But just note that if you are fighting in the nebula, then only ships with voyage can join that fight. Step 2 is diplomacy, and this is why it's super important that you go in order, because diplomacy can literally end battle. The active player first decides whether or not they want to play a diplomacy card, and if they don't, then it's going to go clockwise to the next player, and so on. Step 3 is battle preparations. So we have our ships join the fight. We've decided whether or not we want to play diplomacy cards. Next up, you're going to decide how many dice each person's going to roll. So each ship is going to give you a set number of dice. Then if you're next to your development, that's going to give you an extra die for each adjacent development to that active region. From there, again, starting with the active player, you can spend any amount of energy to gain 1 die for each energy that you spend, and you only get 1 chance to do this. Now, if you're asking, does spending energy increase your targeting value? It's a great question, but no, it's just going to give you a temporary die or dice to be added to the fight. Now from there, know that your limit is 6 dice, and then you check your targeting value, which has a maximum of 5. So here's how targeting works. Every ship that you have adds 1 to your targeting value, and then sometimes you'll even get modifiers from tactics cards to increase your targeting value overall. So if I had 1 heavy cruiser and 1 transport, plus this card called Railgun, I now have 3 dice from the heavy cruiser, 1 die from the transport, plus 1 more from the railgun. So that's going to be 5 dice. And then my targeting value is now 4 because I have 1 for heavy cruiser, 1 for transport, and then the railgun is going to give me +2 to targeting. Now that means that after I roll the dice, I keep re-rolling all the dice until it's equal to or above my targeting value. So if there are any 3s, 2s, and 1s, all those will get re-rolled. Step 4 is actually rolling the dice. Now you compare all the dice, and the player with the single highest die is going to be the winner. If there's a tie, you go with the next die, and so on. If there's still a tie and there's no winner, then everyone's going to lose the battle. Step 5 is the outcome. If you won, you get to advance 1 space up on the supremacy track, and if you defeated any raiders, you also get the rewards listed on the bottom of their card. If it's just you versus another raider and you won that battle, you still get to go up on the supremacy track and also gain the reward listed on their raider card. Now, if you lost the battle, then each defeated player may take a tactical operations. Now, another big note here that you need to remember is that you can slot in a moon at any time. So you can always keep your moons at your station, and then if you happen to lose the fight and you want to get the moon's resources instead of a tactics card, then you can go ahead and take your moon and slot it in now before actually gaining the tactical operations. Last step of battle is damaging your ships. All defeated ships will take damage, and if your ship doesn't have a shield, which is listed as a blue symbol on the top, then your ship is sent to the top of the scrapyard. And if raiders were defeated, then a single raider in that active region would take damage, and that raider is going to get returned to its raider card unless it was a raider that has an undamaged shield. So now's a good time to tie in repair. Remember that you can repair by going to the shipyard, or later on when you return your ships, you can return your ship to a core module to repair it. Now a repair action is going to do one of the following options. You can move your ships in the scrapyard down to the repair barge. That way it's available to use actions when returning them to station. You can recharge your shields by removing a damage marker on a shield. You can remove 1 damage marker on one of your station modules because sometimes you will buy these modules damaged, or maybe you chose to damage one of your core modules from like an event card or something. And then lastly, if you have nothing to repair, you can actually just gain 1 victory point raw. All right, I know that was a lot, but honestly, when you play out battle in-game normally, it's way faster than you think. It's just all the details that you have to remember in between, but just reference the player guide and you'll be good to go. Let's say I'm playing as blue and I launched a fighter into this region that already has Pink's transport because I really want to stop them from developing in this region. I'll go ahead and recruit my adjacent transport that is within range of this active region. And then Pink's gonna get crazy because Pink decides to spend 1 energy and then use their heavy cruiser's jump ability to fly all the way from this side of the map to the battle. Then we go into diplomacy, and since I'm the active player, I'm gonna choose first, but I have no diplomacy cards to play. Pink then decides to play hailing frequencies, which is really bad for me, but both of us do decide to continue fighting because this tactics card says that any player can choose to end. We're gonna fight it out. All right, now time for battle prep, and I have 5 dice and 2 targeting because my fighter gives me 2 dice, plus my transport, which is gonna give me 1 extra die. So for me total, that's going to be 3 dice. And I also have an adjacent city to this region, which is now going to bring it up to 4 dice. And I'm going to spend 1 energy, so making a total of 5 dice. Because I have 2 ships, that means my targeting value is 2, so I can reroll all 1s. For pink, they have 3 dice for a heavy cruiser, plus 1 more for transport, and that's it. 4 dice total with a targeting value of 2. 1 targeting for each ship involved for pink. Now we roll dice and bam! My 6 already beats out pink's 5, so I win. Now because I won this fight, I advance 1 space on the supremacy track, and pink decides to slot in the moon for their tactical operations in order to get that reward. Their heavy cruiser does take 1 damage, which is going to break his shield, and the transport is destroyed and now goes to the top of the scrapyard. And that right there is an example of how battle works. Now after launching all of our ships, you're eventually going to run out of your fleet. The second main action that you can take is return to station. To return to station, you take your ships back either from the main board or from the repair barge 1 by 1. And when you do, you place your ship or spend 1 energy on any of your modules to activate them, but there are a couple rules to note here. You cannot activate a module that already has a ship or energy on it, and you can only activate a module using energy if you already have a module activated in the same row that has a ship on it already. You also cannot activate damaged modules. So let's go over your core modules from top to bottom. First up is your primary reactor. Now this one gives you 2 energy, and you can activate any number of your other science modules. This has to be activated with a ship on it, and an easy way to remember this is looking at how it has an open gate, unlike all the modules below it. The shipwright lets you build 1 new ship in your launch bay or perform a repair. It's exactly like the Shipyard Alliance base. Now notice how this module has 1 half moon slot, and then when you add in another industry module, it now completes a full moon. You can slot in a moon here only when you complete a full moon slot, and you can also gain the moon's reward when you activate the modules on both sides of the moon. You can even gain a one-time bonus for some moons by slotting them in as well. There's a big difference here on where the moon slots are located, because if there's a moon slot to the left of an arrow, that's totally different, because this means that you have to pay the resource listed on the moon in order to get the effects listed to the right of the arrow. Here's a big one that you might miss. You can always rearrange your modules on your station at any time. And that matters because let's say you want to move your industry modules around and it breaks a moon, then you have to discard that moon when rearranging those modules. The treasury here is simple, straight up gives you 1 credit, and the architect lets you draw 1 tactics card or develop. Now after you finish activating modules, you can then bring all your ships to the launch bay and remove any damage markers from ships that have shields. You can also discard the energy that you used from modules. Here are the 4 types of standardized ships. Transports have a range of 1, a weapons of 1, and the ability to populate, which lets you develop on that planet. Fighters have a range of 2, a weapons of 2, and the ability to attack, which lets you launch to an occupied region on your very first launch. So it's going to break that initial rule. Science vessels have the same stats as fighters, 2 weapons and 2 range, but with the ability Voyage, it lets you explore the nebula. And lastly, heavy cruisers have a range of 1, a weapons of 3, shields, and an ability called Jump, which means that when you launch or when you move the ship, you can spend 1 energy to give it infinite range. Now, when you launch your ship to the development office or you return your ship to the architects, you now have a choice of building a development. But to do so, you need a transport on an undeveloped planet. You need enough leaders listed on that planet, and you also need enough resources to pay for that development. Then you spend the resources, claim that development type, and then slot it into your transport. Your leaders will then get slotted in, and then you can also claim that development card. Now you score 1 point for each leader on the developed region plus all the adjacent regions. So you'll get 2 points for leaders inside the factory, 2 points for leaders in the nebula, 2 more points for leaders in Odessa Field, 3 points for leaders in the development office, and only 1 more point for 1 leader in this adjacent spaceport, because the max that you can score is 10 points when building a development. Every development also has a one-time use ability, and this symbol means that you flip it to the other side once you use that one-time ability as a reminder. The observatory lets you secretly look through the discovery tokens on the top space in order to pick one and claim. The factory gives you 2 repair actions. The spaceport lets you spend any 2 resources to gain any 3 resources. The city lets you choose any 1 available module and add it to your station for free. And the obelisk gives you 4 energy. Now, when you buy from Odessa or Maximus Field, or when you win combat or build developments, this is how you're going to be advancing up the progress tracks, and it is a big way to score points in this game. When you see these symbols showing level 1, 2, or 3, This is the level of the development that you're scoring at the very end of the game if you reach that part of the track. When you hit these exclamation point markers, that means advance the event marker up 1 space. And each track also has a unique space. The science track lets you look through the stack of tokens and keep 1 when you reach that space. The industry track gives you a ship upgrade. So here's the big one. Now, usually you have to pay to buy one of your stronger ships, like for the science vessel. However, when you get an upgrade from the industry track, and if you have that ship type in your supply, you get to immediately build that ship at no cost. And if your faction has a specific class of ship, you have to pick whether to choose your faction ability or the general ship ability that you got at the beginning of the game. On the supremacy track, if you're the very first person to reach a token space, then you get to claim it, and anyone after that will score 2 victory points instead. For the commerce track, if you reach this space, then you get 1 point per unspent resource at the end of the game. And if you get to this space, you'll get 2 points per unspent resource. These are vault points. Lastly, on the civilization track, this is how you increase your hand limit to be greater than 5. But the crazy thing is, you refill your hand to that limit. So if I have only 1 tactics card and I advance up this space, now I draw 5 more cards in order to reach that new limit. So when you play tactics cards and when you go by modules at the Maximus and Odessa field, you're going to advance up the progress tracks. And as you do that, all those 3 things are going to move the event marker up. When the event marker reaches the very end of the track, you first immediately reveal the next planet tile and then place it on the next empty space. Fill that planet with a stack of 3 new moon tokens face up, and then put your event marker on your station as a reminder to resolve an event card at the very end of your turn. For these event cards, at the top, it's going to show you which progress track that you're scoring points for, minus 1 point for each damaged module in your station, but to a minimum of 0 points, so no negative points here. Now going down the card, it's going to tell you which raider is going to show up next. You'll then place the raider depending on where the starting location is shown on the raider card. And then moving back to the event card, you read through the special effect, resolve it, and then lastly, the event track is reset back to your player count. So here's how scoring works. First, you get points for the victory point printed next to your marker on each of the 5 progress tracks. Then you get victory points for each of your developments based on the highest level that you advanced up on that progress track. You lose 2 points for each damaged module on your station. Big note here, you do not lose points for damaged ships. If you got the vault bonus on the commerce track, you either gain 1 point or 2 points for each unspent resources, depending on which level that you reached on the commerce track. Check your undamaged civilization modules for any endgame points. If they're damaged, they will not score points. Remaining leaders will give you 1 point each. And lastly, some faction abilities can also score you points as well. If there's a tie, then the player with the most modules wins. Double ties goes to the player with the most resources, and triple ties are a shared victory at the edge. That right there is how you play Andromeda's Edge. I hope you all found this tutorial helpful. If you did and you enjoyed what we did today, what we learned today, go ahead and hit subscribe down below and join the Wolf Pack if you aren't already. If you made it to the very end of the tutorial, go ahead and comment howlers down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in space.